The Room of the Evil Thought. The house, once a minister's residence, held a room they called the Room of the Evil Thought. Ironically, it was the most charming space in the dwelling, overlooking a melancholic cluster of larches that cast a soft, brooding shadow over the room. The previous minister, a charismatic young man, had spent countless hours in this room, lost in contemplation by the crackling fire. He would sit for hours, seemingly oblivious to the world, his pipe, and the flames his sole companions. It was during these introspective sessions, they whispered, that his sermons took on a potent influence, intoxicating his congregation. However, as the fervor of his words began to overshadow the spirit of true faith, a disquiet settled in the community. Some began to doubt the origin of his power, questioning if it was divine inspiration or something more sinister. Whispers of animal magnetism and hypnotism filled the air. And eventually, the young minister was dismissed, leaving behind a palpable sense of unease. The new rector, a far more sociable man, replaced the brooding atmosphere with lively receptions and dinner parties, and the community found a renewed sense of peace. Yet, a few confessed that they missed the depth of thought the previous minister had inspired, even if his presence had been unsettling. He had a peculiar way of exposing not only their existing sins, but also their latent capacity for transgression. A mesmerizing figure. Women adored him. While men found him incomprehensible, he was, in the end, a man they were glad to be rid of. He was a genius, they'd say, their tone laced with a mix of pity and disdain. The Hanscom family moved into the old rectory, and Grandma Hanscom, drawn to the warmth of the fireplace, claimed the room as her own. She relished the roaring fire, its flames mirroring the comfort she found in the familiar sight of the larches, remnants of her youth. One afternoon, while dozing by the fire, Grandma Hanscom awoke with a gasp, her normally gentle eyes wide with a terror she'd never known. A chilling thought, growing in intensity, cast a mask of tragedy over her face. Her grandchildren, eager to explore her new room, pounded on the door, offering ginger cookies. But the woman who emerged was a stranger, her voice trembling with fear as she cried, "Away! Away! Out of my sight! Before I do the thing I want to do. Send someone! Children! Quick!" Terrified, they fled, summoning their mother, who found Grandma Hanscom clinging to her skirts, her voice choked with sobs. "Tie me, Miranda! Make me fast to the bed or the wall! I want to do an awful thing!" They restrained the trembling old woman, who raved through the night, begging to be held back from the dreadful act, the nature of which she refused to divulge. The next morning, they moved her to the sitting room, hoping for a return to normalcy. She seemed to recover, her quiet self again, though exhausted from the previous night's turmoil. Yet, a shadow of remembrance would creep over her face, accompanied by tears of confusion. Back in her room, despite the warmth of the fire and the comforting glow of the lamp, the cries of the evil thought returned. Hal, home from college, moved her to his room, where she seemed content. But the insidious influence had not abated. Hal, missing from breakfast the next morning, was found pacing his room, his face etched with a mix of despair and a chillingly familiar intensity. He hadn't slept, his eyes bloodshot, his face aged by something more than years. When he saw his sister, he sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands, beads of perspiration forming on his brow. "Hal, what is it?" she cried. But her brother only clung to the table, his eyes filled with a horrifying mixture of torment and a flicker of hatred. Screaming, she fled, summoning her father, who laid a hand on Hal's shoulder. In that instant, a horrifying sight unfolded. Hal's hands reached with desperate urgency for his father's throat, his eyes bearing the look of a madman. The father, a former college wrestler, reacted instinctively, striking Hal down and dragging him into the sitting room, tears streaming down his face. By evening, Hal seemed to have recovered, dismissing the incident as a fever brought on by overstudy. His father, however, remained apprehensive, keeping him confined to his room. Grace and her mother, seeking solace and comfort, gathered by the fire downstairs. The familiar sounds of the larches, their mournful whispers, carried a new edge of menace. The fire, flickering in the draught, cast an eerie blue glow. A chill settling over the women. An unnatural coldness enveloped them, a chilling sensation akin to the foreboding presence of an iceberg on a moonless night. Then came an unbearable heat, a fiery heat that consumed them. Their eyes, now blazing with madness, met in a shared understanding of the terrible thing that had taken hold of them. They fled the room, their embrace a desperate plea for sanctuary, for they had been spared, thankfully, from the unspeakable act that had threatened to engulf them. Thus, the room of the evil thought remained, locked and abandoned. The family, healthy and happy, tried to banish the unsettling memory, but the room remained a haunting presence. One day, Hal, reading the newspaper, stumbled upon a paragraph about the former minister. He had gone on to Australia, where he had committed a horrifying act, slashing the throat of a fellow passenger before attempting to take his own life. The family, exchanging uneasy glances, felt a chilling wave of realization wash over them. They understood now, with a grim clarity, the nature of the evil that had haunted their home. The next week, the room of the evil thought was demolished, replaced with a bright and innocent bed of pansies. The larches, their whispers silenced, were carried away to the sawmill, leaving the space free of the chilling presence that had once lingered within its walls. The end. If you like the story, hit that like button and subscribe for more videos. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Was there anything that surprised you? Who's your favorite character in the story? I can't wait to hear your thoughts.